Welcome to What's Important to You, the podcast where we explore purpose, passion, and the moments that truly matter. I'm James Dean, and each week I sit down with inspiring guests to uncover what drives them, inspires them, and what's important to them. Today on What's Important to You, we explore authenticity, identity, courage, and what it really means to live truthfully as yourself. For many people, the hardest journey is not changing careers or chasing success. It's giving themselves permission to stop hiding. In this conversation, we talk about coming out later in life, the fear of losing relationships and identity, and the freedom that can come from finally embracing who you truly are. From ministry and grief counselling to becoming a pioneer in LGBTQ+ coaching, today's guest has helped countless people navigate profound life transitions with compassion and honesty. Today, we find out what's important to Anne-Marie Zanzal. Hi, Anne-Marie. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, James, for having me.
Yeah, really looking forward to chatting to you. So we're going to dive straight in with the first question. Anne-Marie, what's important to you?
Wow.
I know.
That is a loaded question. You made me laugh because I am an LGBTQ coach, and you said we're going to dive straight in. And I'm like, well, are we, James?
Yeah.
So there's a joke in the queer community that when you're doing directions, you go, instead of saying going straight at the light, you say go gaily forward. So we're going to go gaily forward today. What is important to me is that people get to live their most authentic lives possible. And that if we all embraced authenticity, our world would not be where it is today. That is what's most important to me. So my niche is people coming out later in life in the LGBTQ community. But what I know is how I coach people through that. It's really anybody who is looking for authenticity. It's all the same. Sometimes, the later in life, the queer piece or the LGBTQ piece has that biological part of it too. But it's like people are so afraid to be authentically who they were created to be. Because that means if we risk losing relationships. We lose an identity that we have carefully cultivated over years and years and years. Sometimes we can lose jobs. Sometimes lose our kids, our spouses. And I don't want to just focus on the loss because grief is real, but the joy outweighs the grief. So there's excitement, there's joy, there's happiness, there's peace, there's contentment when we embrace our authenticity.
Yeah, I mean, that word authenticity and being authentic has been shared many times, obviously on the show by different people. And sometimes I think it's definitely a word that's in the sort of in current discourse as well. If you know what I mean, it's out there as such. To use a pun.
Yeah, it became a buzzword.
Yes,
like probably about 5 to 10 years later. When I first was doing all this, I didn't like the word because it was a buzzword, but there really isn't anything that describes what it is like to be fully yourself, except maybe authentic contentment. That word.
Yeah, I love that word.
Inner peace.
Yes.
Courage. I mean, all of those words can go, or courageousness, all of those words can go with it. But authenticity, now showing up exactly who you were created to be, is pretty strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know what I was going to say is because and I think we can tell, I think because that word has been used so much, I think people are becoming I think I'm a much more attuned to when people are just using it as a word and just BSing us versus actually genuinely showing it. And I think from your perspective, and obviously from a personal perspective, and then the people that you try and work with and help through whatever changes, or I don't know, how would you describe that sort of, coming out or whatever? Is it a change? Is it a transition? Is it a becoming? What's the sort of word? Or is it just coming out? Is it? Yeah,
Yes. First of all, do you identify as straight?
I am. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I just wanted to just
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because if you're straight, there's things I talk about that somebody who wasn't straight, I don't need to
Yes.
talk about with.
Yeah, 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 of course.
So people who are straight often assume that coming out is just like this one time thing. You do
Mm,
a Facebook post, you tell your mom and dad, you tell if you're, later in life and you're married and you have children, you tell your spouse, you tell your children, you tell your circle of friends. But no, that's not what it is. Because we live in a very heteronormative society, meaning everybody is assumed to be straight unless proven otherwise. So we are continuously coming out. You
yeah,
know, I'm married to a woman. So every time I say my wife in a
yeah.
situation, I come out.
Yes.
So all those words you used, coming out, becoming, grieving, all of
Mm,
those words are how you would describe this experience. So it takes people a long time to accept this
mm,
about themselves. Typically, I'll have people follow me for 5 years or so before they even reach out. And that was me. I'm somebody that came out later in life. I was married for 27 years. I came out at 52. I have 4 kids. When I came out, they were 12 to 24, and now they're 24 to 36. I, you know, it is starts with how sort of straight people think about coming out. They think about coming out like, so if somebody who is gay tells you they're gay, sometimes the response is, "Thanks for telling me." Sometimes it's like, "Well, I don't need to know what's going on in your bedroom." Sometimes it can be very negative. But the point is that being gay and who I sleep with is about 5% of this journey. It really has nothing. I mean, it has some things to do with this journey. When somebody is new working with me, they'll say, "Am I going to blow up my life just for sex?" And the
mm,
thing, this isn't about sex. Just like straight people, our sex lives are just a part of our lives. They're like,
mm.
it's not my whole life. It's not
Yeah.
something that I think about all the time. Um, but what ends up is that people come out with this, oh, am I going to blow my life up just for sex? And what they realize as time goes on is this is about the lens in which we look at the world. So it also is about who can meet our needs as a human being. So, and my needs are physical, intellectual, spiritual, and emotional. My ex husband tried for years to meet my needs, and I tried to meet his. We had a really good relationship. We loved each other. We loved our children. We were a very good family. We were a very high placed family in our community. People knew who we were. And we tried. And what I came to realize is the only person that will be able to meet my needs as a human being is another woman because I was created to be not straight. And because of me accepting something I sort of knew about myself for a long time. So people who come out later in life, they fall into 3 or 4 categories. There's the person like me. They sort of knew, but they didn't know how important it was. It didn't, like I say in my 30s, I never thought about this. I was raising my family. It didn't even
Mm,
occur to me. Or there's somebody who dated people of the same sex when they were in their teens and 20s, and then they got a lot of pressure to marry somebody of the opposite
mm,
gender, or they either put the pressure on themselves or their family put the pressure on them.
mm,
Men are a little bit different. So men, when they sort of know that they can have relationships outside their marriage, which is sort of shitty. But I also I understand and I don't want to judge anybody.
yeah,
And then there's the people that never ever thought that they were gay
yeah.
before, and they fall for somebody. They fall
Mm,
at work. They might fall for a movie actress. And we call that in our community a catalyst. So a
mm,
catalyst is a person that makes you realize that you're not as straight as you thought you were. And catalyst can also be an event. So a lot of people come out later in life after they get sick, one of their kids gets sick, somebody important in their life dies. A lot of people come out after their mom or dad dies.
Wow.
because that's the person that sort of kept them in the closet, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
A major life change, any type of major life change where you begin to sit down, even changing a job, you begin to sit
yeah.
down and start to say, "Wait a minute." You start to rethink your life. And
Mm.
so those are how people generally come out later in life.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's even the fact that there's different almost categories, as you call it, different ways that people think about it and
Yeah,
how
there's
they
different
and
ways that
yeah, but it's I suppose that from it's hard, and this is where it's like the whole thing of the idea of putting yourself in someone else's situation, the idea of empathy. I find it in almost like when if someone who isn't going through that sort of inner sort of battle with themselves or sort of questioning, if you've not had that to that degree, I think it's quite hard from someone who's not within that community or not within that space to even contemplate the sort of challenges that someone is
they
facing. Yeah, absolutely. The most you might have is about maybe a career change or you know, you know what I mean, or something like which can still be just as arguably stressful or maybe anxiety inducing, but not to the same level. Does that make
it's not
sense?
at the same level. Yeah. And
Yeah.
also too, you really hit something profoundly on the head. So a lot of times, so I work just with women. I work with trans women, so that are women that are transgender. I work with
Yes.
straight men, and we call it cis. And I also work with people who are non-binary that were acculturated as women. You hit the nail on the head, James. So many times my women that I work with spend so much time trying to explain to their
Mm,
husband what's going
mm.
on. And my answer is to them is that he's never going to understand this because he's straight. Some of my women are married to gay men, because they found each other,
Yeah.
and sometimes they come out at the same time, but a lot of the times, a lot of women spend so much energy trying to get their husband to understand what's happening to them and what's going through them, and they just simply cannot because they're
Mm,
straight. And so a
mm.
lot of times of my advice is you need your energy to do other things. We have to just accept. He's not going to understand it on the level that she does. Some husbands, our husbands run the gamut from very supportive and loving and really truly love their wives and just want what's best for them, even if it means a divorce.
Mm,
And then there's the husbands that are in the middle that are, okay. They're not great, they're not horrible. They're okay, they're not happy about it, but,
sure.
you know and then we have the husbands that are pissed
Yeah.
and angry, and they may be angry about the divorce, or they may be angry that their wife is gay, and so
Mm,
they try to make it very, very difficult for them. And
yeah.
so, again, there's a gamut of
Yeah.
people on
Yeah.
behind and
Yeah.
also, typically, if a husband is controlling and manipulative in your marriage before this happens, they
Mm,
typically when this happens
yeah.
too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm
And can I
interested.
also do one
Yeah.
shout out to husbands? This is hard. So if you are married to a woman or a man who is going through this major life transition and all of a sudden your world is upended, please get support from a
Mm,
therapist or for somebody who understands, because you need your person too. Don't try to white knuckle this. Don't try to go this alone. Don't say, "This is her story. I don't need to do anything." Get
mm,
the support from yourself because it's really, really important that you have it.
mm.
This is hard.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, and that's it's a really wonderful thing for you to say as well, because it is everyone's
Yeah.
involved is and affected, isn't it?
Well,
So
yeah,
it
like my 12-year-old, when I came
mm,
my other children were grown, but my 12-year-old, my ex and I got him someone to talk to
yeah,
because we knew we were so heightened that we couldn't be his
yeah,
only he needed a steady it was a we got a man because I wanted
yeah,
him to have a man, and
yeah,
we needed somebody steady in his life that was gonna just be in his corner.
yes,
So, if anything comes up with mom and dad as they navigate this very difficult time and navigate a divorce, I mean, he was the
mm,
youngest of 4. I mean, he was totally stunned by all of this. He needed his person. So,
mm,
if you have the resources, be able to get somebody, that's good. But also to schools, if you if your child goes to a school where it is safe, because I don't want any child, like if he or she goes to a Christian school, may not be able to tell the counselors about this one.
Yeah.
But if your child goes to a public school or to a school that is not religious or anything like that, maybe talking to the school counselor about it so that they have a place to go and talk about everything that's going
Yeah.
on.
Absolutely. Um, there's so many questions I have. And the first one, I suppose, then is, because I don't know, generally, I haven't spoken to many people like
Mhm.
yourself who've come out, and especially in later life. When you actually did it and you came out, and to whether it to your husband or people, what was it? What did it actually feel like?
Relief.
Yeah.
Yeah, it felt like a even though I wasn't conscious of it, I'm
Yeah.
somebody that, like, my queerness, I always look back here because there's a closet in the back of the room. My queerness was on a box in the shelf in my closet.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
not something I thought about, but once something pretty significant. I was a hospice chaplain before I
Yes.
did all this stuff. And one of the things I learned from my hospice patients is that people do not regret the things they do. If you do
Mm,
something and it doesn't turn out so well, you make meaning from it. You really do.
mm,
But they regret the things they didn't do. And I knew that I wanted to go and explore this.
mm.
Now, like a lot of people, I started with just wanting to meet somebody and sleep with them and see if what I thought about myself was true. That was before I realized like all the other stuff I've been talking about. So I'm just
Mm,
very normal, typical person that came out
mm.
later. All of a sudden I was able to talk about this to people all around me. Now, having said that, a lot of people feel that way. And I told way too many people I came out to
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
people like people that really wasn't very tangentially involved in my life. But it is what it is. I can't go
yeah,
back, change it.
yeah.
But I like with my clients, I'm like, be thoughtful about this. Not
Mm,
everyone deserves your story. A
mm.
lot of times people are so relieved and so glad to finally be talking about it, they tell the meat guy, in the grocery.
Yeah,
And I was akin to that. And so
yeah,
I was like, yeah, that's not gonna, don't do that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Relieving.
it's
It feels like you get okay, but let me just back up a little bit. The first person someone tells, they often have this sense of relief and they feel good. And then about 24 to 48 hours, they have what is called a vulnerability hangover
mm,
because they told their truth that they've never mentioned before to somebody.
mm.
I'm often the first time people ever say it out.
Yeah, yeah,
And I always give them what I call a full embrace, very happy for them and tell them that they're, brave and all those things like that. So a lot of times there is relief, but then because this is a brain thing too, because our brains are not used to us thinking ourselves as being not straight, our brain goes, oh, take it back, take it back, take it back. And so people often feel yes, they do feel relief, but often the first, I would say 5 to 10 people you tell, oftentimes you have that vulnerability piece a day or 2 later, but then that goes away after a while.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The the other question that I think is, there's one that's very much, again, we said about the word authenticity being in sort of current sort of discourse and words. The other one is identity, and the
Mhm,
sort of, and how that word has very much shifted in my lifetime of what that means.
mhm,
Before it might have been to do with nationality, or it might have been to do with religion, and there's some sort of, obviously then there's a sexual orientation come into it, and then we've now, whether it's been brought into or it's been put into or whatever, in to do with, you said some of your clients are transgender, and I'm just
mhm.
wondering what does that word mean to you? Is it as important
Yeah,
as it was made to be? Yeah.
but I also think that in our lifetime, we have many identities.
Yeah.
Like, when I was, like, in my 30s, being a mom was my main identity.
Yeah.
Being a wife and mother was my main identity.
Yes.
And then in my 40s, I was trying to find my professional footing. So that's when I went back to school and I became a minister. And so that was important. My professional identity was very important
Mm,
in my 40s. In my 50s, it was my queer identity. And now in my early 60s, which is very developmentally appropriate because we keep, we don't stop
mm,
developing when we're
yeah.
18, keep developing. The developmentally, because I'm now 62, I'm at the place where I'm thinking, okay, what's my legacy of my work?
Mm,
So now my role, like I think of myself as a leader, I am, what do they call them? A thought, what is the word
thought
thoughts?
leader. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a leader. I'm a thought leader, and I want to leave a legacy. I'm going to help. I've helped a ton of women see I'm a pioneer in this field. When I first did this, nobody was doing this.
Mm,
So now there's a lot of women doing this. There's a lot of women offering support to women coming out later in life. So I feel like that is my legacy.
yeah,
I'm not going to help everybody. I tend to attract religious people, because I
yeah,
understand religion. And so my legacy will be to my work life is a spiritual pastoral approach to people who are queer and coming out. That's my work legacy. And I'll probably work another 10 years or so, 8,
yeah,
10
yeah.
years,
Love
and then
that.
I'm gonna retire.
Yeah, yeah. Love
I
that.
win the lottery, then I'll
Yeah,
retire.
absolutely. But I love that as well, and the fact that like I want to come into the sort of the to do with the ministry piece in a second, but going back to the about identity is the fact that it's an ever changing, shifting thing, that
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
transient, that it moves, that it's because I think where the challenge and sometimes where animosity appears is when identity is either as if it's fixed or if it's fixed upon someone. We're telling you you're this, or it's like I can only be that, and it's like versus is kind of like a part of, or and it's like it's not to it's not to say that it's not important, but it's also they say there's so many facets to it, and I think and they say depending on where in your moment in your life, and then as you say, then I think the story you were saying about how you when you first you coming out and then some people can tell everyone and to tell the word, you get that you want to tell the word and the world, and then some people going, oh, okay, I was just shopping. You know what I mean? It's like I get it. It's really important to you, but at the moment
It's not
sometimes it's almost it's not, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, so it's like we get it and everyone gets it, but it's like, but sometimes people just want to it's the whole thing of do it and then carry on, isn't it? There's an element of just live and just
well,
without, I don't know.
what I think the straight community doesn't realize is how unbelievably difficult and painful this is
Sure.
because the straight community makes it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what if we lived in a world where people could just fall in love with who they love?
Mm,
That's really what it's about.
yeah.
Why are we saying that the only thing that exists is love between a man and a woman?
Mm,
Why is that the only thing that exists? It's called the
mm,
binary.
mm,
Why do we live in a binary world? Because it's clear that for as long as the world has been around,
yeah.
there
Yeah.
have been trans people, there have been in some indigenous cultures, they were honored and accepted. I'm sure in Ireland, which had a very indigenous culture back before the Celts, I am sure,
Yeah.
with Celtic spirituality and stuff, there were people who were like they called them two gender people, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also think that, diversity is important for a
Yeah.
society.
Yes.
Like when families intermarry with each other, that ends up screwing up the biological imperative. So the
Yeah.
more diversity we have in our
Yeah.
world among humans, the more
Yes.
we flourish. Because if we look at, I'm looking out my window, if we look at the diversity outside in nature, there's not just one tree out there. There's thousands of different trees. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if we think of ourselves as biological and part of nature, of course there's going to be all kinds of different ways people do things. And that's
Yeah.
okay. Like I
Yeah.
this excuse me, this narrative that everybody has to believe the same thing and
Mm,
march to the same drummer, that's totalitarianism, which my country is facing right now.
mm,
But that's that just
yeah.
does I don't
Nonsensical.
yeah, it's nonsensical, and I don't feel like it's the plan for the universe. I think
Mm,
diversity is so important in
yeah.
our culture, but also in our natural world.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I 100% agree. And it is, and I think it's for me, as you say, because I'm not within the community, you don't see the challenges that they face because
No.
it's purely because because you're unaffected through
Right.
through
Well,
through
that's
it,
like
you
yeah,
know.
like, if you're white and people are
Mm,
black, you do
yeah,
not
yeah.
see talent
No.
unless you happen to engage and to
Yeah.
work within that space.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, most people have no idea what it's like to be
Yeah.
a people of color in a white majority country.
Yeah.
Hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
Yeah. No,
don't s
absolutely.
unless they
Yeah.
want to see it.
Yeah. 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 And as you say, and that's why I think the whole things like diversity, DEI, all those sorts of programs, things, it still is so important because through engagement, conversation, listening to different perspectives, it's not even, I think, and I think it's even perspectives, not necessarily opinions. I think because it is, what's this, the phrase, opinions are like arseholes, everyone has them. It's this, you know what I mean? It's perspectives is what we need. It's different ways of
Well, that yeah,
thinking.
it is a perspective because, like, as a minister, as a female
Yeah.
minister, for
Yes.
years, the only perspective we had was the male voice,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
So, like, the church can, I mean, I know you're probably raised Catholic,
Yes.
in Ireland and stuff like that. And so when we only have male voices interpreting the word of the divine, we miss so much.
Mm,
So having female voices, having differently abled people, having people of color, having the diversity of spectrum of human experience to talk about faith, religion, and spirituality will give you a perspective that you probably never have had before. So, for example, a lot of women have given birth who are ministers and stuff like that. So we like such a perspective to like life giving and stuff like that
mm,
just because not because there can be some wonderful men that are spiritual leaders, but they just haven't had that experience. So
yeah.
they just can't speak. Well, they've been fathers, some of them. So they have the experience of being a dad and stuff like that. But some of the experiences I have as a woman, you're never going to understand because you're a guy, and vice versa.
Of course.
There's some
Absolutely.
experiences you have as a man that I will never understand, and I'm the mother of 2 sons too. I will
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
understand that because I'm not a boy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. But so, because when you said, that was the other question I wanted to go into in the sense of the fact that you're a minister. What brought you? So did that idea or thought process come into you? That's what you wanted to sort of retrain
I'm a
as.
perpetual late bloomer, right? So this is the thing, is that I felt some call for that when I was young, but I went to Catholic school. I had no desire to be a nun. And so where would I put
Mm,
and I used to say, when I was still married and still going to the Catholic church, I would say sometimes maybe if something you can't join an order if you're divorced. Well, they have some orders you can, but if
mm,
I ever become a widow, I might look into doing something like that. Either joining an order or being an oblate with some sort of But that was just like I mean,
yeah.
there was no plans. And then I started attending, so we left the Catholic Church as a family when I was about 40ish, 38, 40, and we went to an evangelical church. It was known as a very family-friendly church. I didn't really know much about evangelicalism when I joined it. And it was a very family-friendly church, but they had women ministers there.
Mm,
And that's when I actually like my call to ministry was a call. And so I was I just had my fourth child. not too thrilled about it, just trying to, because he was like 8 years younger than his siblings. Just trying to like assimilate everything. My ex and I had been the majority earner. I had a great job. I loved it. We had no ability to think outside the box. So I stayed home with my son, which was great in a lot of ways because it was the first child I got to raise by themselves, because the other
Yeah.
three were a horde. And, you know, I was really just in a bad place emotionally and I was having postpartum and I prayed and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm just feeling so not myself. And I literally heard a voice that said, you could be a minister. And I never thought of that before.
Mm.
And I didn't do anything about it. But
Of
like
course.
2 or 3 years later, I started, and as life went on, a couple years
Yeah.
later, I started taking some courses at a
Mm.
and I had my bachelor's, so that was good. I didn't have to go back and do that. But I started to and then when I joined the seminary, that was the first time I ever felt like I was with my people. So my first people were my ministry friends or the people that were really, and I also went to a seminary that had a Christian Muslim program, so I became friends with a lot of Muslims. So that was really, really cool. So
Mm.
that's how, and then I always wanted to be a chaplain. I had no desire to be a pastor. So I've always been on the periphery of the church. Even
Mm.
the work I do now is the periphery of the church.
Mm. Oh, no. It's, no, I think it's, what I'm getting from the conversation is the fact that once you decided, even if it's later in life, to go for something and decide, it was, even if took the time, it's the perfect example of like, you can still do it. So can
Right.
you, do you know what I mean? It's not over. Like you say, you first thought about it and it's 2 or 3 years later and you're still doing it. And it's like, it's this whole thing. And you said to yourself, the idea of a late bloomer and stuff. It's like, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it does, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it because
Oh my gosh, no.
we're told you got to do it now. Everything's got to be in a rush. Don't wait. No, which is a great advice, but it doesn't mean that you can't do something.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Like I said, that like my people usually follow me for 5 to 5 years.
Yes.
So a lot of times I think that we do a lot of processing in our brain
Mm,
or we're thinking about doing something and like testing the waters. We might talk to a couple people here and there. But what I know is like, it's never too late to do something
yeah.
you want to do. I
Yeah.
mean, let me share with you right now, James. I have somebody in my cohort. I coach people by cohorts. She's
Yeah.
80
Wow.
coming out. I mean, she's dealt with this her whole life, and she is yeah, I mean, like, it's a complicated story, and it's her personal story, but I don't wanna get in,
Sure. No.
but she's 85, and when she joined the cohort, she said to me, "I need to do this because if I do not figure this out before I die and accept this about myself, I will
Mm,
be very disappointed in myself." So she's getting just she's had experiences, back 1960. She's had experiences, things have happened, but she's always pushed it away. And now she's like, I got to take care of this. And she's not my first person in there. She's my
mm.
first person in my 80s, but I've had about 4 or 5 women in their 70s. So, yeah, I mean, like, this doesn't go away. Like,
No,
there's
no.
somebody who's listening to this and you've, thought about your sexuality being other than straight, and this doesn't go away.
Yeah.
You can put it away,
Yeah.
come back. And then my question is, at the end of your life, can you reconcile
Mm,
the fact that you never went and really explored this and accepted
yeah.
it? And if the answer's coming back, "Oh shit, I can't do that,"
Yeah.
then you need
Yeah.
to go and explore it.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to be
Yeah.
courageous, and there's all
Yes.
kinds of ways to explore this. And I wanna make another thing too. A lot of people are like, "But I love my husband," or "I love my wife," and people do all kinds of things.
Mm,
There is such a like, that's the most wonderful thing about living today is that if you wanna stay married to your spouse, people make all kinds of agreements. all kinds of ways where people can get their needs met, but that is the primary relationship. That's called an open marriage. Sometimes people practice polyamory, which means both people might date somebody. It's not something I would do. I'm a serial
Mm,
monogamous, but as I said before, it's not for me to judge.
mm, yeah,
And people want to keep their marriages together, you can. There's
yeah,
no
yeah.
no the neat thing is there's no rules. You can make up the rules.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much of what we talk about, and especially obviously in the spaces you're working people with. Again, it's that when sometimes you see people who they're not happy in who they are at the moment, whether it be within a job, a marriage, friendships, relationships, all these various different things. It could be, and then you say, and if there's you bring into what you're talking to people working within their sexuality. There's sometimes I always think, regardless of what it is, of the reason you're wanting to change or do something or follow whatever it is that's inside of you that's really screaming out of it. You could say you could try and put it away, you could not and ignore it or try and I sometimes think how life goes so quickly. It's like you could have had for the time that you sat around not doing anything, you could have had that better. As you said earlier, it will be painful, it'll be challenging. It's not easy to do those things, but it's
No
the sort
matter
of
what it
but
is.
no matter what it is, but the
Right.
potential upside of really living your life in the way that you think is it could be as good as it's the whole thing of it could be amazing, so it's challenges. So I would say again, it's like for anyone, it's like there's a risk. Of course, there's an element of
There's a risk.
courage. There's a risk, but is it? I genuinely think from listening to you, then obviously it'd be worth it because it's the whole thing of do you want to be doing it when you're 85? And it's
Right.
like, and the courageous of that person is, and I think it's
It is
amazing that it's beautiful that they're doing it, but it's also you can't help but go, oh, what if they did
Can I
that
give you
earlier?
an example? So I first thought about, like, really started seriously thinking about this when I was 42. It took me another 10 years.
Mm,
I met my wife soon after coming out. We're both the same age. So we have all the generational. It's nice. We're like a year or two apart.
mm,
One of the biggest, for me, um, one of the regrets that I have is I didn't do this earlier. Now I
mm,
don't I would have met her or not.
mm,
It would have been nice to have like 10 or 15 years of just being together because 5 years after we were together, she had quintuple bypass. And a year later, she had cancer. So I have had to go through a lot of stuff, not physical stuff, but a lot of emotional stuff. So if I had done this earlier, I would have had more time to be a little younger with
mm,
all this stuff.
mm,
And been able to enjoy some of the things, as like a younger couple that we can enjoy. We're not ancient and we still can do whatever we want to
mm,
do. But that, and also for a lot of late in life people, like there's a lot of regret around missing being young and doing this.
mm,
There's a piece of me that, and that, you know, I don't have any regret about that because I know myself well enough and I would have made some really stupid and terrible mistakes in my 20s. I would have been a typical 20-year-old lesbian, hurting a lot of people. So I have no regrets about that. And my wife always says, that was a really hard time. And, because it would have been the 80s. And it was a really hard time and you really didn't miss much. She
yeah,
goes, it's okay. You missed
yeah,
that,
yeah,
So, like, a lot of times, if we don't make the choice to move forward, we do miss aspects of the life
sure,
that could have had. Like, one of
yeah,
my regrets also is that it would have been nice to raise my children with another woman. My ex is a wonderful dad. He really is. He's a great dad. Not a great husband, but he was a great dad. And it would have been nice to have somebody more present. He just wasn't around a lot. And so I did it myself, like a lot of
sure,
women with their kids.
yeah,
It
yeah,
would have been nice to have because women tend to be more present. It would have been nice to have a partner that was like a real partner with raising the children. He was with our
yeah,
4th one because he was around more,
yeah, yeah,
but like with the first 3, it was on me.
Yeah, for sure. I've only got a few more minutes left. What was the brought you then to sort of go into coaching? What was the thing that sort of like, I'm now going to then help the next sort of group of people, should we put it?
There was no resources for me.
Yeah,
There were none.
that was it.
When I first was like, I Googled late in life lesbian, and there was one blog piece and one Facebook group. And again, I saw it, I read it, and 3 months later, I reached out because that is the nature of change.
Mm,
Find out about something, and then we take some time. We find, and so I joined that Facebook, and that's what changed my life. Because when I joined that Facebook group, I had other women talking about something I had only thought about in my head. And then I was like, I'm not the only one. And this is real. This is real. I'm not making this up because you think you might be making it up. I'm like, this is real. And so that was really important for me to find that community. And so that's how, but when I was in that community, I was already a minister, I was already a hospice chaplain. I already was a grief counselor. And what I noticed were people were really, really grieving. So I started my first support groups about 2 years in, and it was just around the grief. As I began to work with our community, I realized it was so much more. I realized it was conditioning, it was internalized homophobia, it was something called compulsory heterosexuality. It was also the brain stuff, cognitive dissonance, building new neural pathways to be able to think that we're not straight. And so it sort of evolved. I've done every iteration of coaching, but now I am where I'm most happy and it works. It really helps people. I know what I'm doing, you know.
yeah,
But
no, I love that.
I mean, I was already had a master's degree. I also was back in the day, I used to do adult development and education for the Girl Scouts. So, I had the background. It was
Yeah,
almost like I had the background to create something like this. And so that's what I did. And so, like a lot of new entrepreneurs, I didn't charge enough and, really struggled for a while. And then now I know how much I offer and I know what I value. I know my value for people.
yeah, absolutely. We could keep talking, we really could. But unfortunately, we can't. So I'll finish. Find my final three questions for yourself. So the first one is there a quote or a phrase that's important to you?
It's on the bottom of my emails. It's from Mary Oliver, the poet, and it says, "Tell me, what do you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" I love that quote. Yeah, and it's at the end of a beautiful poem. I think the
Yes,
poem I can't remember the name of the poem, but I'll send it to you. Maybe you can put it in
yeah,
the show.
absolutely.
It's for, yeah, gay people, but it's also for the people that James too. Tell me,
Absolutely.
this is
Yeah.
like, so part of me thinks we may be reincarnated, but we have multiple lives, but I don't want to get into that. But the thing is that I am going to say this is my only time around, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I've had that one few times. No, and I know the poem you're talking about. I can't remember myself, but I just love the phrasing with that you're one a wild and beautiful life. You can see it and it's just like, yeah, and I can get
There's
that.
there's
Absolutely.
another there is another Mary, I think it's Wild Geese, Mary Oliver, and it's in the beginning of the poem, and I love it. It says, "You do not have to cross the desert on your knees repenting." I just love that because so many people feel
Yes.
so much guilt and shame
Yes.
about wanting to change your life. You do not have to cross the
Yeah.
desert on your knees repenting.
Yeah. No, love that. Who would you say have been the biggest influences in your life?
I think the Catholic Church in the '70s was a big influence for me. It was post Vatican II. I think I started like 8 years after Vatican II. I really was in the hippie church. I was in Connecticut. It was pretty liberal, but the foundation, and I was also very lucky. I was never sexually abused. I never had any bad interactions. The church for me, because my dad was an alcoholic. I came from a very chaotic home. Church and school for me was my place of safety. Makes sense. I became a minister. It was my place of safety and comfort. I loved the church, because I knew what the rules were.
Yeah.
I knew
Yeah.
what the rules. So that my faith and my faith journey. I've been accused of being a spiritual wanderer. I call myself a Catholic evangelical congregationalist yogi. My faith journey has been, I've been accused of being a spiritual wanderer in not a nice way by a couple Catholic women. I'm like, hey, you're in a patriarchal church. That
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But I think that's one thing. Also, like, biggest influence is doing therapy and like getting to
Yeah,
myself. My wife has been a big influence on me. I always joke she gave me the crash course on being a lesbian. And I'm not talking about sex, people. What I'm talking about is that every time my internalized homophobia or my skittishness about being gay showed up, she would challenge me because she's been
mm,
out for like 40 years, My children have taught me, to love unconditionally, even when they really annoy me.
yeah, 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 yeah.
My
That's a
children,
good.
my husband, in a way, for his steadfastness. He's a very steadfast
Sure.
person. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of people.
Love. Yeah.
My mom was like a Baltimore Catechism Catholic, but she was smart and she was educated and she really fostered the love of books for me. And my dad was a touchy-feely kind of guy that loved you and hugged you. And when he became sober, when I was 18, he did so much repair, which is wonderful, you know?
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. It really has. I have
Yeah. One more question?
one more question, which is what's important for your future?
That's a really good question. Grow old, spend as much time with my grandchildren as I possibly can. I have a grandson. I love him. He's one. To travel, have fun. I think that's really like, I love work. My work is fun. I get up every morning and I can't wait to check my emails. I'm busy at work. I have a very good business, so I want to keep growing that, but really my long-term goal is to have fun, and I'd like to see the world a little bit more. I've seen some of it, but I want to go some places. So that's what, that I'm at that age where you want to do that stuff,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
100%. Absolutely. I say it's been a pleasure to chat to. It really has. And I do thank you for coming on the show. And I think you are, as you say, a pioneer in what you're doing, and it's wonderful that you're doing it. And I'm sure the people that you work with are so much better off having worked with you and and the community you're helping. So, from someone who's not in it, I want to say thank you because I think obviously they've got somewhere to go to and someone to talk
Yeah.
to. So I think it's wonderful. I want to make sure more people know about it. I'll make sure links are in the show notes. But you want to give a shout out now where people can follow you online?
Sure. Just by my name, AnneMarieZanzal.com. Don't put the hyphen in.
Love it, 100%.
Actually, if you Google anything like late in life lesbian, coming out later in life, am I gay? I show up.
That's good. Well, there you go. It's a handy Google Google
Yeah.
response, isn't it? Well,
Yeah.
Anne-Marie, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. I am.
Thanks for listening to What's Important to You. If you enjoyed this episode, follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if it resonated, share it with someone who might need it too. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment or ask a question, and let's keep the conversation going. I'm James Dean, and I'll be back soon with another real conversation to help you reconnect with what truly matters. Until then, take care and stay curious.